Okay, where did I go? Good afternoon. Being at 4:45 with a quorum present in chambers, I'm calling the Human Resources Committee to order on Monday, June 13th. We'll start with number one, the approval of the May 9, 2022 minutes. It's in your packet, the minutes. Any questions or concerns? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to accept. Thank you. I have a motion by Gisselman, second by Herbst. Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye as well. That passes unanimously. Number two, Human Resources Report for May. That's in your packet. Any questions for our HR Director?
I do have one item on here that I wanted to highlight, and that is a change to the handbook. It's the vacation section of the handbook, and we added the language that allows the mayor at his or her discretion to grant temporary exceptions to the maximum vacation accumulation limits. The limits that are approved by council remain for any vacation payouts upon separation, but the mayor would have the authority under this language to temporarily suspend accumulation limits as long as they're not being paid out. So this is an issue that is coming up with some of our larger projects like the employee relations or the ERP project, that payroll and finance. Our employees are just working like gangbusters and they really can't get away. And so we're having people bumping up against those accrual limits. Go ahead, Karen.
Go ahead.
So is there some way for that to come back to this committee so that we can sort of keep track of that for future? Will the mayor be reporting back those exemptions as they are?
We can add a section in the report that keeps track of exemptions as they're granted.
As they're granted, just so that we keep an eye on
Yeah,
some of that for
definitely.
future handbook revisions.
I think the report itself is probably the best place for that to live. We can
Right,
definitely
right.
do that
I
for
would
you.
agree, right.
Okay. That will happen. Thank you. Number three, discussion on possible action creating an extended retirement notice incentive.
So right now, we have a couple of ways that we encourage employees to let us know when they're separating. If an employee is eligible for a post-employment health plan, they have to give us 3 months' notice in order to qualify for that benefit. And we also have employees who are resigning or otherwise leaving voluntarily can give 2 weeks' notice in order to get vacation payouts and those types of things. And what we're finding is, first of all, not all employees are eligible for a post-employment health plan. For example, I was hired as a non-represented employee after that benefit went away, so I, upon retirement, would not qualify for it. So there's really not a whole lot of incentive in place for me to give the city advance notice before my retirement. So what we are looking to do is to mimic the sign-on bonus of $2,000 to encourage employees to give us 6 months notice before they retire. And we aimed this towards retirement because, to be honest, there's not a whole lot we can do to incentivize. If someone is resigning, the likelihood that we'd be able to get a substantial notice period is pretty unlikely. But it is possible for retirements. And what that 6 months notice does is it gives us enough time to recruit, fill the position, and have the new person overlap with the current incumbent. It also, in circumstances like the police department, allows them to do staff planning to the degree that they can know how many retirements they have coming and get new employees hired and through the academy and ready to hit the ground before those folks leave the positions. So that's kind of, we didn't want to make it so rich that we were encouraging people to retire, because we do want our tenured people to stick around. But we also wanted to get some incentive there to get as much notice as possible. Our average recruitment takes 3 to 4 months. So this gives us about a 2-month cushion in case we're reclassifying the position or if we wanted to overlap for training purposes.
Question? So then is this go across collective bargaining units, or how does it affect the unions in the, does that become a collective bargaining issue, or is this just across the board with all employees carte blanche?
We would have to sign MOUs with the unions, because we don't have the ability to unilaterally change those contracts. But if this is supported by council, essentially what we would do is we would call up the unions and try to
But-
amend their contracts accordingly.
So that is a contract type of issue that would have to be resolved somehow.
Yes, we wouldn't have to wait for negotiations. We could do it as soon as we had council approval, but it would be a side letter to the contract.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And my understanding is that there'll be some kind of cost savings to balance out the incentive from what I read in the packet. So with the police department, for instance, there'll be the ability for people to be in training while there are officers who haven't retired yet still out in the field, so it may reduce overtime costs. Is that correct?
Yes, the police department will utilize some overtime savings. That wouldn't necessarily be seen in all departments. So for example, if the position that we're overlapping is an exempt position that isn't getting overtime, they're probably not going to utilize the same cost savings. But yes, our hourly positions, and particularly the police department, would see quite a bit of savings.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to accept it. Go ahead. Thank you. We have a motion by Killian. And a
second that.
Second by Martins. Any other discussion or questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. That passes unanimously. All right, number 4, discussion and possible action approving the alternate work arrangements policy.
So the alternate work arrangements policy is a couple of programs put into one. Our employee handbook right now already allows for flexible scheduling and changing off of your normal department's schedule. What we have added is a remote work component as well. We had done this during COVID, and it was very well received by both management and employees. And what we're doing is making that possibility a permanent option for employees. Now, that is contingent upon making sure that our service to our internal and external customers is not negatively impacted. But each department would be able to manage that individually, and department directors would have some discretion on determining how that would operate for their unique needs.
Any questions or concerns about the purported policy?
Since what is is there an employee relations committee? I don't know that I know of that. So is that,
Stop.
Yeah, so the Employee Relations Committee is pretty new. We've met twice, and each division was able to choose a representative to be a part of this committee. And the committee nominated a lead representative to run the meeting. And it's an opportunity for two-way conversation between HR management and the employees. And one of the things that we did was we talked about this policy, how it works for their departments. It was something that feedback from that committee was that it was strongly favored by the Employee Relations Committee. So the employees really liked that flexibility, and they wanted to continue that option.
good, no, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, so I take it, during the early period of COVID, that acted as kind of a pilot program for this informally, and if there were going to be any hiccups, unexpected hiccups to be identified, they probably would have been identified during that period. So it sounds like everything went smoothly, essentially, and was probably more to the satisfaction of staff and employees. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, any other questions, or would you like to make a motion to accept this new policy?
So I'll make a motion to approve the alternate work arrangements policy as presented.
Thank you. And I have a second by Herbst. Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. That passes unanimously. Discussion and possible action reallocating bus operator positions.
So we have two bus operator positions, bus operator 1 and bus operator 2. Bus operator 1s are our part-time bus operators, and they help with the extra routes for the school routes, so getting kids to and from school. And our bus operator 2 are full-time positions. We usually hire people to the bus operator 1 positions as a part-time, but we have been struggling for years now in filling those positions. We've made some changes back in 2019 to the pay, which had an immediate influx in candidates but no sustained improvement. We had one recruitment where we filled all our vacancies, and then we kind of went back to the status quo. So what we're hoping to do here is to change our position authority for 4 bus operator 1 positions to change them into bus operator 2. That would give the department the flexibility to hire people either to part-time or to full-time. And we're really hoping to see if the barrier to recruitment is the part-time status. And because we can underfill the positions, the department isn't bound to fill them as full-time, but they would have that ability to do so. We're critically short-staffed for the bus operator positions, and we're trying to figure out what the barrier for that recruitment is. And this is kind of our next step in figuring out what's going on. We also are in negotiations, so we're anticipating some other changes to that position as well. Because of our numerous vacancies, this is actually fiscally neutral because we have so much salary savings that we could pay people to be full-time and be within our budget for salary.
This is really necessary. I have been on transit for many years now, and this is critical. What our bus, for those who may not understand what our bus operators 1 do, is that it's not just a part-time position, but it's flex shift. So as you can understand, at school, you have morning shifts, early morning shifts to take kids to school, and then you're off during the middle of the day, and then you come back at night, or not in the night, but you come back in the afternoons. So with that, there's a special kind of niche job for that, because people may want part-time, but I want to put my 4 hours in at 4 hours and then have the rest of my day off. Or, I want, a different kind of schedule or work 3 days a week instead of all this split time. So we're hoping that by looking at a full-time position, we can find things for these bus drivers to do. We're in the middle of a transit plan that we may be able to do other things with them if we can find a way to expand or whatever. But we are critically in need of something, and I think we've tried wages, we've tried everything, and some of this is it's just not enough. And this is the only other thing that we can think of that is stopping people, is that split shift. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Becky is saying. We are critically short of drivers. This has been a persistent problem, hiring to part-time over the last 5-6 years. The pandemic has made this much worse. We're just getting very few applicants, and we kind of have a window of opportunity before the next school year starts. And if we're not successful fairly soon here, we're going to have to start identifying routes that we're not going to run in the fall. We've got supervisors driving. We are forcing overtime. We are forcing people to drive on their days off, and morale has suffered as a consequence. So this is, as Becky said, the next step in, trying something. I would also say that we are about to engage in more serious collective bargaining later this week. And I suspect we're going to land on some things very similar to this proposal in the process. But in case we don't complete bargaining before we lose our HR director. I would like to have some sort of alternative in my back pocket so that we can take some sort of action, in the next number of weeks here.
Any other question? Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, I see, we, right now, we're sitting at 9 vacancies for bus operator 1. Are we fully staffed at bus operator 2, or are there vacancies?
Yes. So we've, over the last year and a half here, flexed positions. We created an additional full-time and then one fewer part-time. All of those full-time positions are full. So we have 9 vacant part-time positions. So we have no part-timers.
So the problem, I'm guessing that, the problem, what's going to come to a head this fall is we've got nobody to run the school routes, so.
Correct.
But having the ability to hire somebody as a bus operator 2 right away takes a lot of, I'm assuming it's going to take a lot of stress off the existing drivers, because
Yes.
now you've got people that, even if they might be doing, the mornings and afternoons, but they can also flex into some of those other shifts or spots, or?
Correct.
Okay.
We are also, as Becky said, in the middle of our 5-year plan, and we're talking about various opportunities to perhaps expand service. And say, for instance, we expanded to a Saturday, and we've got this additional labor, and we're looking to fill out their hours. I think that's also a logical next step. We are already on our way in terms of staffing to be able to have enough labor for that service.
Okay.
Any other questions or concerns? Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
And I'll second that.
And I have a second by Martins. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that passes.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Discussion and possible action approving a market study.
So we've talked a couple of times about how much the labor market is changing as a result of the pandemic. And the employee handbook tasks the Human Resources Department with every 5 years conducting a labor study, a market study of our pay. And we're looking at doing that early. We're at 3 years right now since our last wage study. And I just don't think we can wait. We have, the market is changing so drastically that I really don't want the city to get left behind. And so what this is a ARPA request that I would like to put forward to the Finance Committee, asking for our wages to be compared to market now. This is not a complete wage study like we did last time. Last time we figured out how jobs compared to each other. We moved around what salary grade that you fell in and all of those things. That information, I think, is still valid and appropriate. And so what I would like to do is just compare our current jobs to the labor market. I'd like to do it in a custom study. Last time we used pre-published studies. So we used surveys that had already gone out and already been filled out. What I'd like to do is identify who we want to compare ourselves to get a little bit more accurate and streamlined of data, as opposed to something that was a general report. It is going to take some time. Best case outlook is a 4-month turnaround, but I'm hearing from other communities that their reports that have already started this process, that they're not expecting their information until late fall, early winter. But I think we've got to get started sooner rather than later. My hope is that with an appropriate vendor and with the more streamlined process, that the fact that the human resources staff is really heavily burdened right now with that ERP project, that it'll be a little bit less burdensome than an overall study, that we're just doing the market analysis, trying to correct those wages.
You have something to say, Gary, or?
Of course, yes, since I was involved, the last time. So what would be the end, so that we would be looking at salaries, we would be looking at a variety of so what would be so are we prepared, is the city prepared? Is this committee and the city council prepared for the adjustments that are going to be possibly be made with regard to the budget and all? Because I remember what happened last time. And option 1 and 2, option 3 never made it, or it made it eventually, but I think things would have been better if we would have maybe took a gulp at that time and said, yes, let's do it, but we didn't. So I'm afraid that I would just like to know that we're going to be in the face of a budget crunch and is this going to be something that this committee is going to be prepared to sell to the finance committee and to the city council once it is prepared? Because I don't want us to go through this and then say, well, I guess we can't afford it. I just need to hear from the rest of this committee with regard to how they're seeing this, because it is going to be an adjustment to our salaries and our budget, and it's going to, I think it's necessary. I think that if you would have heard me 3 or 4 years ago, I was clearly for option 3, which meant a lot of money at that time, and I think we're paying for it at the present time. So I just want some assurance, and I like to hear from the rest of the committee with regard to, are they prepared to sell this to the finance committee and the city council with regard to the adjustments that are going to have to be made to our salary budget?
Well, I guess I can answer just for me, myself, is that I don't think there's going to be, I don't know how to put, I don't think that there's another way of doing it besides doing this, okay? I mean, wages have increased dramatically. We are in the same boat as, I would say, 90% of other, and not just municipalities, but other employers in the area, where wages are going up because employees are scarce. So I don't think that there's a choice. We have to run our city, right? So we're going to be paying people what they're worth. I think that it has to be, and I think you can see the next issue on here is how serious we are in this committee. Because this is just one portion of it, is a wage adjustment to make it market rate. But we may have to do something before that as well. Wages are going, I work in the employment field. Wages are going up everywhere, and it's a bandwidth. Now, we have to watch out that we're not going to, we can't just keep throwing, water on it. We have to look at the whole package, right? But this is what, we have to have something that backs up what people are asking for as well. I've been in committees and well, anecdotally, somebody can make $15 more an hour here or there. I think we need, for our residents as well, who are our taxpayers, we need something specific that says, yes, this is the market study, this is the data, and have data backing this up. I think then we definitely have something to go to the city council with, and I don't see how anybody could say no. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if we're totally prepared for this, but we definitely need to go ahead with this plan, and I totally, fully support it.
Hi. So I want to just also give my full-throated support for this. I know Alder Herbst has served on the Water Commission, and we talk about this at every single meeting about the costs for employees, what we're paying people, is it fair? We hear about it from our county counterparts. If we don't do anything, even if we're not prepared, I think we need the data for the argument. And I think as a council, we should discuss our priorities and paying people what they're worth. So thank you for the consideration and hopefully the support.
Thank you. Yes, I think this will be useful and necessary. And to Alder Gisselman's earlier question about, is the committee prepared to sell it to finance, and will finance be buying? I mean, I think when you look at things like food, healthcare, water, those are things you buy because they're necessities. It's not really an elective decision. So I think if finance looks at this reasonably and objectively, it won't be much of a choice. It must be done. And I think we have to recognize the input and contributions of employees and staff here for the city. I think it's what makes the city run. And without that, I think what you will have is a city that does not run. So I think this is a high priority, and we should recognize and value what staff and workers have done and pay accordingly. So I do support this. My one question would be, might there be another appropriate funding source rather than using ARPA dollars? So, well, I do fully support this. That would be my one question. Are there any other appropriate funding sources we might use? And the reason I ask the question is because, while there's buckets of ARPA, in terms of applicable uses that are very flexible, it just seems like ARPA is being relied upon more and more as kind of almost, euphemistically, I'll just use the word flexible. I won't use slush fund, but it's becoming way too flexible, I think. So might there be some other appropriate funding sources for the study?
I did speak to the finance director, who's in the back of the room, about this. And right now, what we're looking for is we've identified ARPA to fund the study itself, and not the implementation of the study. And our review of the guidelines, it is firmly allowable within the guidelines for proper ARPA usage. If the finance committee objects to that funding source, I definitely would ask them to help us identify and work with Marianne to identify another one, because if at the end of the day we decide not to use ARPA, one way or the other, we've got to use something to pay for it because it's critically necessary.
Thank you. And, perhaps I don't know if the finance director wants to weigh in at all, but yes, I'm aware there's at least one bucket, I believe, up to $10 million. That's essentially, a blank check for, I think, government services and so forth. It had been a lost revenue bucket, but they had made it much more flexible some time ago, where you did not have to do the actual accounting on potential lost revenue. It was essentially just a check to use for anything that was relevant to that broad bucket. I wouldn't let it stand in my way of support for this, but I feel more comfortable in general moving forward if ARPA started to be used for really helping our citizens recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic, particularly those most vulnerable. But I'll still support this. Thank you.
All right, I guess it's my turn to give this a kick, so.
So hard, I know, first of all, I want to say, it's so hard to see you over all these monitors, so please just.
I know, I had the same.
I know, I'm not ignoring you.
I had the same problem a couple weeks ago when I chaired that finance committee meeting, because I couldn't see poor Carol. She was really in the corner.
Yeah.
I think this market study is definitely necessary. In the last year, I think we've attacked just about every piece of low-hanging fruit in order to attract and retain a quality workforce. The wage and market study we did, I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago. It's got a solid foundation, and it was very comprehensive, but. Like you said, Tony, some of the information as it pertains to wages is now obsolete. So a hybrid approach where we stick with our current steps and classifications I think is good. And then to just reassess what the rates and wages are, is definitely the route to go here. I'm a little bit questionable about using ARPA for this, because I like to see ARPA funding to be more transformational transformative for the city as a whole, and that's where things get kind of cloudy for me. But maybe if I'm sure if finance can find an alternate funding source that would be better than ARPA, I as a member of finance, I'd be totally for that. My big concern, though, has to do with even with 4 months. We've at a minimum, a study being released in 4 months, we're not going to have the data we need in order to put next year's budget together. And if we're looking at something, at a more realistic 6 to 8 months out, we're going to get stuck with some kind of a budget modification. So I don't know if there's something that we can kind of do a little bit of planning ahead of time on in the budget process, so that we're sort of ready for this. We don't know where the market study is going to take us, but if we can factor into our incoming budget a pot or something of that nature, and then let the market study tell us how that pot needs to be distributed, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable, instead of having to do some kind of a modification come February or March of next year. But no, I'm totally going to support this wage study, market study, and we need to get moving on this.
And I think one thing that we could do is when a vendor is selected, we could work with that vendor to get an estimated implementation budget that could be built into the 2023 budget. And then the study would help us use that, allocate it where we get the most bang for our buck, or the best return on it.
Could that be a part of our, the agreement that we have with because I don't want that, Mike's thought, to get lost. And I think that that's going to be very important as we go into the 2023 budget, to have this monies there into that budget. And I don't know if that can be incorporated into the request for proposal, however you want to do it. But I think that as we go forward, we need some kind of an idea of what to be building into that 2023 budget, so that this doesn't come as a total surprise and now we have to try to find the money. So I think that should be incorporated somewhere into and I think that's a good idea. I was fretting about that, and thanks for that idea.
Yes, we can work that into the RFP.
Any other questions or concerns on that? Otherwise, we can take a motion to accept and approve the market study. I don't know, does anybody, I know that there's been a couple of comments regarding the use of ARPA. Do you want to amend it, asking for another source before it goes to finance? Up to you.
Yes, how easy would that be to do, Madam Chair?
I think just give finance the direction to either rate it for ARPA or to recommend an alternate funding source. So I will make an amendment in that regards to direct the finance committee to rate this proposal for ARPA dollars, or to recommend an alternate funding source for this proposal.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion to accept, take action and approve a market study directing finance to rate for ARPA or find an alternate funding source. Is that correct? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, that passes. Okay, discussion of possible action approving mid-year cost of living adjustment for non-represented employees.
I apologize for the numbering error that I just noticed when the meeting started. So one of my big concerns about the market study is that implementation timeline and the delay in any real response from that study and what's going to happen to recruitment and retention in that interim. And so what we've got here is a recommendation for a cost of living adjustment in the meantime that would offset implementation expenses of the market study and also be an immediate change in the salary scales for our non-represented employees.
Thank you. I just have one question. It gives a fiscal impact, and above that, under background, it does talk about the cost of living increases that were negotiated by the fire union, for example, and others, and it gives a percent increase that was negotiated. I may have missed it in the packet, but it does, other than the direct fiscal impact, do we have a cost of living percentage that is being targeted for this?
Yes, it was, that fiscal impact represents a 2% mid-year increase.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion about doing this? It's, I think everybody that lives in our life right now knows what's going on in our economy and how wages are being eaten up. We know that wages have gone up dramatically, that we just spoke about at the last action we took. They've gone up dramatically over the last, year, but this last 6 months really a lot. And so we wanted to give our employees, the ones that have not been afforded the COLA increases, the non-represented, some relief immediately. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And I have a second by Herbst. Any other questions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, discussion and possible action approving recruitment for Human Resources Director position.
Greg alluded to this when he spoke, but I am sad to announce that I have accepted a different role, going back down to the Milwaukee area where my family remains located. And so that means that the Human Resources Director position will be vacant. My last day is this week Thursday, so it's right around the corner. And I always strongly support an external recruitment for director positions because they are very front-facing, they're important leadership positions. And what this money would do would be to fund an outside recruiting firm to come in. I think it's particularly important when it's the HR director's position because I usually help guide the city through these high-level positions when we're looking to fill them. And it's very difficult to put my staff in that role of picking their own boss, so to speak, and also trying to guide the ship at a level so much above maybe their current classification. So what this would do would be to bring in an outside firm to help us get the best person for the position.
Anybody?
I will make a motion that we go ahead and get an outside source to seek a new replacement for Tony, but that's going to be tough. So Tony, you will be missed, and we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I definitely support this.
Okay.
So then how do we proceed then? So do you have somebody in mind, or how do we proceed then with regard to engaging? Well, I'll second the motion, thank
There-
you. So how do we proceed then with regard to, does this committee, how are you envisioning, is this committee sort of the hiring or the committee that sort of oversees, or do you have somebody in mind, or how do we proceed in engaging this consultant?
The city does have a relationship with a recruiting firm. They actually were used to fill the position when I was selected. We've used that firm to fill our development director position, and they also helped us with the public works director position when we hired Mr. Lindman. And so we've been working with GovHR is the name of the recruiting firm, and they're pretty well represented throughout the Midwest, but they have a national reach. And so the intention would be to secure them to run a recruitment.
Okay.
And they would coordinate with the mayor, because this position is a mayoral appointment with council confirmation.
Okay. Any other questions about the procedure? Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Well, I'll be supporting this, and I just wanted to echo Alder Herbst's sentiments and thank Ms. Vanderboom for her efforts, professionalism, and mastery of the subject matter. I've always been impressed and appreciative of that, so I think this will be a real loss for Wausau, but you really set a good example as a department head. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will express, of course, and viewing many years of HR relationship in the city, it was, you really have given this fine balance and a calm nature throughout all this. And I treasured my experience working with you, so best of luck. And you, like I said, I think it's important to see your balanced approach and your professionalism. It was, and especially after what we went through for many years in the city. So thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn. This is very bittersweet. Bitter because this lady has taught me so much in HR. Over, I think, 5 years, her and I have been together, and I cannot tell you the hours we spent together. I feel like I have a good grasp of HR, which is a very, very tough subject. You know, she's taught me about equity and parity, and you'll hear me say those terms many times in meetings, because we have a unique situation in the city in that we are not an employer that makes one product. We have public health and safety, we have assessment, we have economic development, we have a vast amount of employees over a vast amount. It's like a little companies within a big company. And to try to bring all that together and to make sure everybody's treated fair and equitable, and make sure everybody is as happy as can be. And it has been a hurricane in the last number of years with COVID, with the changing labor market. We have some represented employees, some non-represented employees. We had a wage study. We've had it all. And she has righted the ship. This is a major loss for this city, a major loss. And I want, the residents have always heard that from me, that we had somebody with a true north. All she cared about, she wasn't, on anybody's side. She just wanted what was best for the city. She always looked out for our fiduciary responsibilities. She made sure that the city and that the residents were always protected. It's bitter. But the sweet is that she gets to move to where she wants to go. And I hope she's making more money. And I hope that she gets to work in a more progressive area and a little less misogyny. So I'm very happy for her. So good luck. God bless.
Thank you.
And we'll stay in touch.
Definitely.
So we do have a motion and a second on the floor to approve recruitment for Human Resources Director position. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? That passes unanimously, and we are now at adjournment. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Thank you. And we are adjourned. Thank you.